It's me, it's Rebecca, I eat books. Today we're doing a 4K Q&A. Can you believe it? We're doing it. We're answering some questions. I got some really good ones, actually. Some really hard ones. I wish I had better, more impressive answers for. Thanks for 4K, guys. You're really the best. I've been doing this for over a year now, and it's really fun. The number one thing that I've learned from BookTube is that people are generally great. My general outlook on the world has been more optimistic because of everyone I've interacted with in the book community. Pretty sick. I feel very lucky. All right, questions. Ready? Go. I have a lot of questions here. I'm definitely not gonna get through all of them. So I'm gonna try to get through a bunch and go pretty quickly. If I didn't get to your question, I'm sorry, just send me a DM and we'll chat. That's my favorite way to talk anyway. Okay? Okay. The first question is, can you tell us your best Bookie podcast recommendations? First of all, if you have a good Bookie podcast recommendation, put it down below because I'm always looking for a good Bookie podcast. I really like LARB, the LA Review of Books, the London Review Books podcast. Those are both interview styles, people who are on tour usually promoting a new book. You know, Nell Zink is promoting her new book Avalon, so she'll be on there. Or Elf Bottoman did the rounds when Either Or came out. There used to be a great podcast. I'm gonna take my Tivas off. There used to be a great podcast that hasn't been made in like 4 years, but it was called Slate's Audio Book Club. 3 people who worked at Slate, and they just picked a book every month and they each read it separately and then talked about it like a book club. And I loved it because they weren't afraid of spoilers. So don't listen until you finish the book. But then it was having a chat with your friends who read the book with you. I miss that. I really like the New Yorker fiction podcast. Deborah Treisman, who's the fiction editor at New Yorker, brings in an author, somebody who's had a short story published in the New Yorker, and they can pick whoever they want, whatever story that's ever been published in the New Yorker, and read it. So you get to listen to a short story, which is cool. But then the best part is they discuss it afterwards. 2 very accomplished people, the editor of the fiction section and a published author, talk about this story like scholars, which is great. It's really fun to listen to that. And lastly, I think my favorite bookish podcast is called Apology. It's not overtly bookish. The host has on interesting people, sometimes authors. Rachel Kushner has an apology podcast. I'll link that below. Rachel Kushner on Apology, one of my favorites. So good. Also musicians. I just listened to Bill Callahan, and they just talk about what they're reading or what they like to read. I love that. That's a recommend. Books that made you want to remove your eyeballs and eat them. This is such a good question. Could be due to how atrocious it was, how disturbing, moving, profound, devastating. A good question. The first one that came to mind for me was Know My Name by Chanel Miller. A few books have made me quite so angry. That book is about her rape case. She was raped by the Stanford swimmer guy. His name is Brock Turner, but like, her name is Chanel Miller. She details that process. It's just infuriating. That book is infuriating, how the process of bringing a rape trial to court is. I knew it was bad, and as I read it, I was like, I just can't believe that this is what counts as a justice system in this country in this day and age. Another book that made me want to rip my eyeballs out was Long Division by Kiecy Lehman. That book is wild. I actually have a vlog where I read it. I'll link it here because I'm gonna butcher trying to explain it now. It takes the concept of what a novel is and turns it on its head and does its own thing. Wow, eyeball eater for sure. What book do you wish you could give to your high school self? So many. Anything not written by a white man, because that's all I read until I was like 25. I recently read The Right to Sex. I thought a lot about how I wish I'd had that book before I started having sex, or I'd had access to those kinds of conversations before I started having sex. Also, I recently read Body. I thought a lot about how I was really into writing in high school. I wish that writing had been framed in a more liberatory way. It's too hot for hair today. All right, I find it difficult to find quality non-commercial lit fic. What are the best recs other than YouTube? One thing that I recommend is finding publishers that you love. I mean a lot, but Sharko, Verso Books, Soft Skull, just keep up with their website. They're gonna all publish quarterly catalogs. A list of all the books that are coming out in each season for anybody to download on their website. They're very detailed. They'll tell you who this book is for, other authors that are similar that you might have read, what the book is about, background on the author. I just find that to be the best way to find out about interesting books. And sometimes you read those and you think like, this book is going to be perfect for me, and then you read the book and it's not for you, and that's okay. A little trial and error. Okay, this one's tricky. It says, what book has influenced your political views the most, be it in your time at college or after? And similarly, someone else put, what was the first book that changed how you saw the world? I studied political science and English in college. I was exposed to a lot of really interesting political writing. I really appreciated studying politics in college. I mean, I could be really cliche and be like, Foucault, Marx. One theorist who has stuck with me from college is Miranda Fricker. She coined this idea of epistemic injustice, which is like injustice based around knowledge, the power and classes created by the holders of knowledge. For example, people in control create phrases that give meaning and shape to our world. Sexual assault as a phrase didn't exist until somebody created it. Somebody in a position of power created it. And before that, women and people didn't have a framework to name when something happened to them. They couldn't say this was assault, this was rape. When those phrases didn't exist, those concepts didn't exist. I think that's like a really interesting thing to think about that I return to, especially in my reading life, as I think about who has the positions of power to create the narratives that we read. I will also say that one of my favorite professors in college was Gregory Orr, who is a poet. In addition to beautiful poetry, he wrote a book about how poetry can save your life, and I took a course of his by the same name. The power of poetry in his own life, but also systematically to create healing pathways for trauma, community organizing, and that's something I've returned to a lot. I love you, Gregor. In grad school, I studied education, which is also a very politically charged topic. Really shaped my politics. Some of the favorite people that I read or studied at that time were Beverly Tatum. I strongly ascribe to a constructivist framework of pedagogy in teaching, and I was exposed to those through the writings of John Dewey and Jean Piaget, who believe in the innate wonder and intelligence of the child, not the teacher. Knowledge is something created and constructed together by the people in the room, not bestowed upon children. And then my politics are always shifting and evolving, and I feel like I've had a real political awakening in my reading life in the past few years. A lot of that is due to Adrienne Rich, who I've talked a lot about on this channel. Maggie Nelson is a great political critic, especially her book on freedom is really meaningful to me. There's also great fiction with political undertones, like Severance by Ling Ma. Nell Zink is a great example of a political fiction novelist. I mean, all novels are political, right? If they're not, what's the point? We could really go down a rabbit hole with this one. I'm gonna move on. Okay, so this question says, how do you thrift books? How do you know what to pick up among the mountains? This is a great question. I'm always in awe of people who go to thrift stores and use bookstores and are just winging it and pull out great stuff. I don't know how you do it. I keep a list. I am a nerd. I keep a list for everything, but I have a note on my phone that's called used books, and I pull it up when I get to a used bookstore. It's alphabetized. Every author I know that I'm interested in, alphabetized by last name, because that's how used bookstores are usually organized. And then I have them subcategorized into fiction, nonfiction, gender studies, poetry. If the bookstore is also separated, which it not always is, that makes it easier. I've been really wanting to read an Edna O'Brien, for example, which I just did and loved. I used this method. I've been hearing about Edna O'Brien. Friends said I would love her. I was curious. So I added it to the list. And then when I got to a used bookstore and I was scrolling down my alphabetize, I found it. Because I know that Edna O'Brien, I don't need to pay for a new book for an author that's been around for 50 years. If you recommend a book to me and it's not a new release, if somebody recommends a book to me on YouTube or Instagram or just a friend, I just add it to my used books list. It is rare, in fact, that I buy new books. I almost always just buy used. I love going to used bookstores, and when I go with somebody, I say to them before, like, is this a quick perusing trip, or can I take out my list? There are names on that list that I'm like, I don't remember where I was recommended this or who recommended this or who this person is anymore, but it's on the list, so I'm just gonna grab it when I see it for $1. What's the best library you've ever been to? Okay, this is gonna be annoying, but have y'all ever heard of the Beinecke here in New Haven at Yale? The Beinecke is a rare books library here. It's amazing. If you're one of my friends who visited me in New Haven, you're rolling your eyes right now because I make everybody go to the Beinecke. All of the rare books are kept in a center column down the middle of this building. And you can walk around the different floors and look at them in the center through the glass. The outside of the building is made entirely of marble, blocks of marble. And the marble has been carved so thin that light can get through. So there are no windows, but it is fully illuminated on the inside during the daytime because the light is filtered through the marble. But because of something about the marble, it filters out the harmful UV rays that would hurt the rare books. Come on, tell me that's really cool. The other one that came to mind is I grew up in DC, so I had access to the Library of Congress. Not a bad library. But I am curious to hear other people's answer to this. What are some cool libraries? I would love to know. Somebody said top 10 favorite books ever. I refuse to answer that question. It's too hard. Perfect meal wine book pairing. Okay, I think that my perfect book would be an author that I know I love, so I know it's gonna be a banger, but something I haven't read yet, but I'm excited to read. An Iris, for example. If I pick up a new Iris to go drink wine outside, I know I'm gonna love it. It's Iris. A new Iris that I haven't read yet, new. You know what I mean? New to me. And then I want something really drinkable that's just gonna go down easy, delicious. Nothing that is really complex and requires pairing with the perfect food. Just like something sort of chuggable and chilled. Maybe a Lambrusco, like a nice, bubbly, chilled, easy drinking red that I could accidentally go through 4 glasses while I'm reading. And then you definitely need a handheld food item to go with this because you're gonna have your book in one hand and you're gonna be drinking and eating and you want to just be able to grab it without looking. So I'm thinking a monster snack board. Some really salty cheese is going to go well with the sort of sweet Lambrusco. A shit ton of tinned fish, cheese and crackers, fresh veggies, finger food, Lambrusco, and that sounds like the perfect afternoon to me. I want that. Country you would love to visit. A lot of them. I've been talking about Japan for a long time. I'd really like to do that. I'm a strong believer that the perfect vacation trip somewhere is half is hiking and the second half is bougie in a city. So I would love to go hiking in Japan in the mountains and then go spend a week in Tokyo eating and shopping. Or similarly in the UK, I'd really like to hike the Scottish Highlands, that area, do the Bothies, and then go to London and eat and shop. I've never been to the UK. That's not true. I went to Dublin once for like a day. There's a hiking trail in Corsica. I mean, European hiking culture is amazing. I did the Tour du Mont Blanc in the Alps a few years ago, and hiking in Europe is just the best. Huts, and it's really well marked and far superior. And there's a great one of those trails that does an entire loop around Corsica, and I really want to do that. Please, does anybody want to do that with me? Does anybody want to sponsor my trip to Corsica? I will vlog it. Okay, 3-course last meal. I love all the food questions. Y'all know me. I want to talk about food. First of all, I have celiac disease, so I don't get to eat delicious gluten. So honestly, if it was my last meal, I knew it was my last meal. Really good pizza, some delicious handmade pasta, soup, dumplings, ramen, chocolate chip cookies, the best French bread, croissants. Really, it would just be like a carb fest. It would be all the gluten in the world that I haven't had. If that's cheating, if that doesn't count, then probably a really fun Chesapeake Bay crab event. A huge group of people that's just like hours of picking at crabs in the middle of the summer. Fresh tomatoes and fresh corn, super summery. Or like a big Korean meal with just like every banchan in the world. Dessert would be a massive platter of every tropical fruit. The juiciest figs dripping, and everybody's just like taking a bite of one fruit and putting it back, wrapping, and everybody's just got juice dripping down their face. That sounds so good. Books that made you have epiphanies. How many times in this Q&A can I mention Adrienne Rich? Lots of Adrienne Rich writing. Blew my world wide open. The Argonauts by Maggie Nelson, which is one of my all-time favorite books, made me have an epiphany about care work, radical individualism, and the value of caretaking for others. The Simple Passion by Annie Ernaux gave me a little bit of an epiphany about writing my own narrative and having my own understanding of controlling my own story and the power that I have over that. The Neapolitan novels by Elena Ferrante gave me a little bit of epiphany about the salve that female friendship is in a really fucked up world where you're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be both angry and have the balm of friendship. And also just like an epiphany about seeing myself in literature, being pumped about books, excited about reading. Somebody asked about the rings that I wear, which is really sweet. I wear 4 rings usually. This one is a little signet from Majuri on my middle finger because it's too big. I wear what was my engagement ring. Very simple. And then on my ring finger, I wear 2 rings. This one was given to me by my mom. It's just like a super simple little etched band. She said she bought it for herself when she got her first real adult paycheck. Gave it to me when I was a teenager, and I wore it actually in college like this on my upper thing like that because I was a cool hip girl. And this I bought, so Justin, my husband and I, we never did wedding rings because we were poor. So when we got engaged, we proposed to each other. We picked out rings. We bought them both on Etsy. So they're not like, you know what I'm saying? His in particular was like very affordable. After we'd been married for about 5 years, I was like, it's time for wedding rings. So I bought him a real wedding band for the first time from the company Golden, GLDM, and I got myself this little one to wear on my ring finger at the same time. Those are my rings. This is extremely embarrassing. The number one question that I receive that's not book related, probably gotten a million times since starting this channel, is my curly hair routine, which is incredibly kind and makes me blush. Thank you for asking. I've been putting it off for a year. I decided to finally answer that question. I'm not gonna make everybody watch that because only a handful of you are fellow Jewish girls with big hair who just want to know. So I put that as a separate video. It'll go up the same time as this video. I'll link it here. Here's my incredibly cringeworthy, embarrassing hair routine. I can't believe I did that. Okay, moving on. Advice for your younger self. I say this all the time. Life is long. When you are young, you think that everything that is your current reality will always be your reality. Everything that's true about you now will always be true. When in reality, I have been 15 different people in my life. That's the best thing about being alive. Life is long. Anything that sucks right now is not gonna, it's not gonna be there later. You would be surprised how many lives you get to live. So like, chill out a little bit. That's what I would say to myself. Chill out. It's gonna get better and then it's gonna get worse. But then it's gonna get better again and then it's gonna just be different. You don't have to define yourself. You don't have to figure out what you're good at or what you like, who you love, what your identity is tomorrow. You get to have like 70 versions of those things. So chill. Favorite recipes for summer. I fucking love summer produce. Since I've been a small child, gazpacho has been one of my very favorite foods. Really good cold gazpacho full of tomatoes and cucumbers is delicious. And if you're looking at me like, I'm sorry, you want me to eat cold soup? I know it's weird. You want me to eat a savory smoothie? Yes, I do. Try it. So good. I also love sabich, which is a Israeli street food of hard-boiled eggs, pickled anything, just like all the pickled things, fried eggplant, and any condiments you want stuffed in a pita. It's sort of like a falafel, also delicious, but you have eggplant instead of falafel balls. And so you got like a tahini sauce, you got like an Israeli salad, fresh cucumbers and tomatoes, pickled onions. There's some hummus, go for it. Tzatziki, mandatory. I eat that once a week, for sure. Also just like a cold rice noodle salad, maybe some tofu, peanut dressing, and then whatever veggies you have. Fuck, delicious. Lots of cilantro, dill, and basil. Herbs on everything. What was the favorite meal on your trip? Okay, we were in Orcas Island, which is off the coast of Washington, very close to Vancouver. Orcas Island is like horseshoe shaped. We really only had one full day there. So we got up in the morning and hiked both of the mountains on either ends of the horseshoe, one after the other. So we got to see the view from either end. Saw it all in one day. It was about 15 miles and we finished that around 3. And then we went to this place called Buck's Shellfish Company. Outside seating on the water. We went to the counter to order and we're like, what's good here? And she was like, well, see the water right there? The oysters came out of there 5 minutes ago. We're like, great, we'll have a lot of them. That was definitely the best meal of the trip. Okay, this one says, can you give us the dirt on your college experience? And then this one says, talk about more of your time as a teacher. Okay, I actually took a year off before college. Worked on the Appalachian Trail in the White Mountains in New Hampshire for the fall season. And then I came home and applied to colleges, state schools. Little known fact, if you're a resident of the District of Columbia, which is not a state, like I was growing up, you can go to any state school in the country for in-state tuition. So I applied to state schools. I went to the University of Virginia. I also spent a few months working on a winery in Burgundy, France. I'm very fortunate. Then I went to UVA. When I was visiting UVA as like new students weekend, I was paired with some person and we were walking to her dorm one day and she pointed to this dorm and she said, that's called Brown College. It's a residential college for all the weirdos. That's where the nerds and weirdos live. So obviously I applied to live there. I lived there for the first 2 or 3 years of my college experience. It's where I met all my best friends and I had like really, really wonderful college experience. Fell in love, literally and figuratively, with these women, like-minded people who wanted to make art. UVA is a real party bro Southern school with a lot of good old boys. This residential college where I lived was this bastion of really smart, thinky women. I mean, there were boys there too, but I don't remember any of their names. And we just loved each other, cooked food, read books, talked about poetry, made random shit. And I also was really involved in the school paper. I edited the Cavalier Daily, and that took up a lot of my life. It was a cool experience. I was exposed to a lot. I covered cool shit. It was cool to do something that was not related to my studies. I studied political science, minored in English. After college, I decided I wanted to do something in the field of equity and social justice. So I became a teacher in DC in the Congress Heights neighborhood, which is south of the Anacostia River. I returned to the city where I grew up, but DC is an incredibly segregated city. So I wanted to return and work outside my bubble. I had a fantastic experience in DC teaching in public school there for a few years. I was also getting my master's in special education at night at the time. And then I went to Oakland, California and worked at like the most amazing school. Teaching is incredibly rewarding, very fulfilling, and it's the hardest job in the whole world. I miss it a lot and I could never do it again. People who are teachers are the salt of the earth. I currently now train teachers. I work overseeing school implementation of social emotional learning. I do a lot of work with teachers, and sometimes I just see teachers labeling the book or sorting books in their library, and I have an immediate visceral PTSD reaction. The amount of work and worry that they are putting into their job. The number one reason that I switched out of teaching is because I could not sleep at night. I currently have a job that I care about, I really enjoy doing, but I find it really easy to close my laptop at the end of the day or on the weekend because the stakes are low. I feel like I'm contributing to the world, but nobody's gonna die if I don't check my email on the weekends. No one's gonna die. No one's gonna die. When I was teaching, it was impossible to turn it off because I felt like if I didn't give 110%, like I was ruining children's lives or somehow disadvantaging children. Teaching is so hard. So if you're a teacher, you have no idea how much I respect you. It's the hardest job in the world. There you go. How did you start your garden? Were you always good at it? That's hilarious. I'm not good at it. I'm faking it. Here's the tip. Ready? Super simple. Find out your zone. Okay. Then Google a planting calendar for your zone. It'll tell you when to plant and then just fucking wing it. And here's the thing, seeds cost $2. Try something and then you will fail. Your carrots will not come up because you will not have thinned them enough. Squirrels will eat all of your cucumbers. Or you'll underwater or overwater and then you'll make a note. And life is long, and next growing season, you'll figure it out. The worst thing that happens is you only have a handful of cucumbers at the end of the summer. A handful of cucumbers. That's the best an activity where the worst case scenario is a handful of fresh, delicious cucumbers? Come on. Amazing. This says, not a question, but can I just say I love your friendship with Lindsey so much? So do I. Lindsey and I met on Instagram talking about books. And it's been the greatest thing that has happened to me in my adult life. Since being a 30-year-old human, it is the single most affirming new development. Friendship is amazing. I highly recommend it. I also got a question about best Iris Murdochs, where to start with Iris Murdoch, what should be your first Iris Murdoch. I am not the resident Iris Murdoch expert. I've read a few. I love her. But as you may know, my friend Lindsey is my go-to for all things Iris. So I asked her to do a cameo here. Roll the tape.
Hello, my name is Lindsey. I'm a friend of Rebecca's. She got a question about her favorite Iris Murdoch novel, and she asked me to answer it. I'm currently reading all of Iris Murdoch's fiction. I'm gonna read them all. I'm reading one a month, and I have some categories for you. So, if you're into no plot, atmospheric, beautiful language, location, you should read The Italian Girl. I think this is the first novel of hers that I read. It's really sultry, hot. Yeah, the ending does not disappoint. So you could read that one. If you're into hyper plot, Rebecca would call it a romp. I don't really know what that means. Something that's just gonna keep you on your toes. You should read A Severed Head. Rebecca's also read this one. It's just a real fun book. Everybody is sleeping with everybody else, and a very classic, but also short. A lot of her, for instance, some of her books get into 400 pages range. So if you want Iris experience without committing yourself to reading one of her books for a week or so, I would say A Severed Head is your best bet. Now, philosophically, my favorite book that I've read of hers is The Nice and the Good. Iris Murdoch is a philosopher. She was trained as a philosopher at one of those fancy British schools, and I think this book is the best of her philosophical lens on the world. She loves to write about morality, the ambiguity of morality, the cream of the crop. If you are really into imagery, language, words being super attractive next to each other, a little bit freaky, you could read The Unicorn. I read this one several months ago, and I really, really loved this book. It's about a woman who has kind of made herself into this anchoress, martyr type of person, and all about her pitfalls. It's beautiful. Okay, thanks. Bye.
That was cute, right? Thank you, Lindsey. You're the best. I love you. All right, books related to nature, the outdoors. Okay, so there's some obvious ones like The Overstory. I would say Disappearing Earth, really good. Barbarian Days, H is for Hawk. In the Distance, which I read and talked about this summer, really good. Favorite TV shows? My answers are gonna be so boring. These are not interesting. The Sopranos, The Wire, Succession. All of these are just HBO shows. The first season of True Detective, HBO. The Leftovers, I think that was also HBO. Basically, I'm an HBO slut. Oh, I've talked about this on my channel before. Not on HBO. Atlanta, one of the best shows on television. The first season of Atlanta, perfection. Perfect television. I also got the question, what is your current job? I alluded to this a little bit earlier. I work at Yale. I'm a director at the Center for Emotional Intelligence. So we have a wing of the center that does research on emotional intelligence through the psychology department at Yale. And then we have the wing of the less smart people where I work, who take that research and translate it into practice for K-12 schools. So I work with teachers, mostly administrators and district superintendent types, to have them implement this research so that their teachers and students are able to manage their emotions to the highest ability possible. What is the scariest book you've ever read and enjoyed? The first thing that came to mind when I read this question was Now We Have Everything, which is a memoir about becoming a mother. And it is frightening. I think partially because I read it in my 20s when I didn't know that many women who were mothers. So I didn't know, people weren't talking about what breastfeeding really is. Breastfeeding is so scary. Has anybody read that? I think it's a Karen Russell story about the like gremlin who sleeps in the gutter and she has to breastfeed in the middle of the night. Yeah, breastfeeding is frightening. Giving birth seems very scary. I read that book one day on my lunch break at work, and I came back to work and somebody stopped me as I was walking the door and was like, hey, can we talk about this email? And I was like, I have visions of bloody nipples and I can't focus on anything else for a few minutes. I just need to decompress because you would not believe what I just read. Also, one time when I was a kid, 11 or something, we were on a family vacation at a beach house. We were staying at this house and they had this collection of every Stephen King ever. So I picked up Misery and I was reading Misery and I was like, oh my god, turning the pages, like sweating. It was really windy out, there was a storm, and I'm sitting there in this room in this beach house reading, and the window blew in and shattered. Definitely the single scariest reading moment of my whole life. Did not sleep for days. Can you recommend a hopeful book about women being awesome? I love this question. Yes, I can. I struggled with this question at first because all of the things I want to say also are about things being shitty for women, but that's the reality. Women are awesome because things are shitty and they overcome it. That's my caveat. All right, ready? Anything by Eileen Miles is going to be about women being awesome. The Matrix by Lauren Groff is an amazing book where there are no male characters at all. The Argonauts, which I already talked about. Of Woman Born, all about badass women. Circe, badass women. Salvage the Bones, badass young woman. The Vegetarian, Signs Preceding the End of the World, written by a man, but all about a badass woman. I feel like that's not a very good list. I'm disappointed in myself. Put in the comments what you would recommend as a response to this question. I have a couple questions here about Hushpuppy, my best friend / dog. So I'll answer those and then I think we're gonna wrap it up because this has been going on for so long. What are Hushpuppy's favorite books? I've thought about it. Hushpuppy is a real inspiration to me because he's committed to rest. He really resists the work economy. He doesn't believe in the capitalist hamster wheel, go, go, go. So I'm pretty sure that Hushpuppy's favorite books are like Das Kapital, Work Won't Love You Back, How to Do Nothing, Communist Manifesto. He's just like a big Marx boy. Someone also asked what brand of dog is he? So we don't really know. We got him at a shelter in DC 10 years ago. My first year as a teacher was when we adopted Hushpuppy. Who knows? But we have met several people who have something called Dakota Sport Retriever or something like that. It's a mix of a golden retriever and a cocker spaniel, and that's exactly what Hushpuppy looks like. Everyone we've met who has a dog who looks just like Hushpuppy will be like, whoa, your dog and our dog are twins. He's a Dakota Sport Retriever. So that's what I like to say because they're fancy dogs. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for 4K. Thank you for submitting questions. If I didn't get your question, I'm sorry. Comment below if you have another question and I'll just answer it in response to the question. I'll just answer it. Okay. If you watch me do my hair care routine video, please don't tell me I'm so embarrassed. Pretend you did not watch it. Okay? All right. Love you, nerds. Like, a lot.